So, welcome back to Hustings 2014. Are we all having a good time? That's a much better response than we had earlier. Obviously, you may have been using the bar. So, I think Alan actually has a very serious message to convey now, which I might be belittling.
Yes. A students' union is a place where you can all come together and exchange ideas and be yourselves, and it's part of university. And what used to be called good manners today is now called a safe space. People are putting themselves up in this election in order to be challenged, questioned and probed. They are not putting themselves up to be insulted, to be bullied and to be ridiculed. Now, when you're doing something within the Students' Union, and that extends by using the hashtag Surrey Decides on Twitter, you are part of the union, you're associating yourself with the University of Surrey. You are under a general obligation, not just as a human being, but under the Student Charter to treat others with respect. There have been, tonight, some fairly appalling comments made on Twitter, which are thoroughly disapproving. If any candidates know that that is their supporters, I urge you now to tell them to stop, especially when they can be linked back to student accounts. This is something that both the union and the university take very seriously. I know up here, Charlie and I try to create a little bit of debate. Sometimes we're being a little bit harsh. But it is always about the ideas, it's not about the people. So if we find anybody making comments of a sexual nature, or of a racial nature, you know, we will clamp down on that very hard. So I don't want to say any more on that, but I think, you know, to make this election as fun as it's been so far, let's treat each other with respect and have a good time. All right?
Cool. But having said that, please don't let it put you off actually getting on Twitter and getting involved with the conversation. We've had a lot of interesting debate going on tonight, a lot of interesting comments and questions coming through. So I think we're now going to go to VP Education, the hustings for that. So I'm going to welcome Alan. Is it? Sorry. Yes, my bad. We're going to the Editor-in-Chief. So I'd like to welcome Charlie back to the stage. And then also, big round of applause for the candidates for the Editor-in-Chief role as well, please.
You are allowed to insult me, that's okay. Okay. Don't be too nasty. Okay, so we have some preset questions. You know the format. I'm just going to go to one non-preset question. What's your favourite media? Steph.
StagTV. Do you have to say why?
No. Or? What's your favourite media? It's just warm us up.
I actually am pretty impartial in the sense of I like them all. That's how I came into this job, this election, because I. So
is it just to be fair to Steph, so just none.
Yeah, so all of them.
all of them. Okay, so that's our setting. That's what we're up against. The preset question is the Editor-in-Chief. If I refer to this position as the EIC, that's just because it saves words. Is the representative of the Board of Trustees and responsible to them. Should there be another conflict between volunteers in media and trustees, how would you look to resolve this, Georgie?
Hello, I'm Georgie. I'm a third-year student studying business management. As Editor-in-Chief, I may be a representative for the medias to the trustees, but every volunteer is entitled to their own opinion and to air that opinion. I believe that the best way forward in any situation of conflict is to have all parties involved in the same room together and hold a discussion. Communication is key. Instances like this, if parties do not meet as a whole, miscommunication can lead to escalation of what could be a very simple resolution. As Editor-in-Chief, my job will be to mediate any disagreements. It will be part of my position to take into account both sides of the conflict and thus stand as a mediator within it. Depending on the scale of the issue, reports and notes would be taken in advance to use as supporting evidence that can be related to the argument at hand and aim to find an equal ground within the disagreement.
Okay, thank you. And Steph?
I think when it comes to a conflict between a member of the student body and the Board of Trustees, it is vital to understand how big an issue that is, that it actually has a lot of impact on the student or the people involved and the members of the Board of Trustees. So it's not a decision to be made lightly. It has to be made based on facts, not on personal opinion. And therefore, I would find it the most important thing to find out what happened, how it happened, and importantly, why it happened. Because it's always important for a decision like that to see the bigger picture, to make a decision that's rational. Therefore, first thing is to speak to both sides, find out what their view on things is, because both of the opinions will be biased, so normally the truth lies somewhere in the middle. And therefore, it is vital to create an open dialogue, like mediate a meeting, mediate communication.
Yeah, that's okay. So that's the preset questions. I'd just like to announce them via their VTs that they've pre-recorded. Sorry, that was my mistake, which will hopefully roll now. Hopefully, being the key word. Go.
The candidates for Editor-in-Chief, Georgie Smith.
Hi, my name's Georgie and I want to be your Editor-in-Chief for next year. It's not just because I have a passion for media, but it's also because I have a passion and a drive to push this union forward.
Stephanie Stoll.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Stoll and I'm running as your union's Editor-in-Chief. You should vote for me because I stand for greater transparency, more opportunities, and I already have a year's worth of experience being president of StagTV.
Let's get another round of applause for the two candidates for this position. Okay, so without further ado, some popular or unpopular manifesto questions. Georgie, you say in your manifesto here that students are choosing not to listen, not to read, particularly not to watch. And your answer here is to play the radio in chancellors, to have StagTV more widely broadcast across campus. So if they're choosing not to do so, is your policy to force them to listen, to force them to watch it, shove it down their throats?
It's not to force them, it's to show them that it is there to be listened to. I think it's the awareness that I'm trying to get out there. A lot of students don't really know who the medias are and what they do. So no, I would never force it on someone, but my idea is to make sure that they are completely aware of the opportunities, of just generally it being there and being able to listen to it, and just to be able to get involved.
Okay, and Steph, something that your manifesto is very clear on is that you think there should be honesty, transparency, and an honest dialogue between the union and Stag Media. First point, you speak as if the union and Stag Media are two separate bodies, and my question to you is, the union executive holds open meetings and publishes their minutes online, yet you, as an active member of the student media, belong to closed Facebook groups that do not allow access to ordinary students. What have you done to open these groups, and what does this say about transparency? Where does transparency actually lie?
As you said, the executive meetings are accessible for everyone, and I think that's something that's not really public. Not many people know that they can turn up to these meetings.
Let's stick with yours. Stick with the media. So, is the media currently transparent? What's your response to this issue of closed Facebook groups?
That these closed Facebook groups are for organising events, for discussing things that are a bit critical by nature, to be brought to the broader student body straight away without discussing about it. It's basically what you do in the exec meeting itself, that you speak about a new policy or a new event that you have coming up and make a decision before you take it to the student body.
Okay. Do we have any pressing questions before I move on? Okay. Last night, the peak of listeners to Stag Radio was 13 listeners, while in total 500 tuned into Stag TV. So far this evening, the peak of people listening at one time has been 8 listeners, and the peak for Stag TV is 120 viewers. Is Stag Radio worth the funding? Steph?
Stag Radio is definitely worth the funding, because if you look at their normal listener figures, they get their listener figures from Google Analytics, which counts the IP addresses, and it sums up to about 700 to 800 listeners per week. which is a lot of people. That's actually comparable to people watching the news bite every week. But Stag Radio isn't just about listenership. It's also about training opportunities. It's probably the largest arm of Stag Media that we have in terms of members, and they actually organize a lot of events that students go to and take for granted without even knowing that it's Stag Radio who organizes them, like DJing downstairs in the living room,
if
for example.
If it's not being listened to, should it be broadcasting?
I think it still should be broadcast because there are people who listen. And
I'm just going to move on to Georgie. What do you think, Georgie?
To start off with your numbers about tonight, I think every media is more prominent in certain things. People probably want to watch this more than they would listen on the radio. But then people want to listen to the music more than reading the news. And it depends on what situation. But no, you wouldn't. The radio should be broadcasting. It's part of Stag Media. Stag Media is the TV, the radio, and the newspaper. Like Steph said, they are a presence on campus, and they've had a great presence. And it should not be shut down, basically.
Okay. What do we think? Any comments? Any questions? Anyone interested in this? This role is a part-time position, but it's unique in the fact that one of these candidates, if they're elected, will receive £3,500 over the year in order to facilitate that role, in order to compensate for them not working part-time. So this is student money that will go into this. So there's actually money at stake, perhaps more so than when it is a part-time officer. Does anyone have any questions to these two at all? Do we have any from... Sorry. Who's got the mic? We've got... Calvin's going to run towards you. Okay, just got a couple coming in from Twitter, so I'll go to those in a second.
So, yeah, I'd like to add on that point, do either of you guys know exactly how much money goes into each of the 3 branches of Stag Media?
Steph?
As I sit on the editorial board, which is the board that decides over the amount of money that we get every year, I know the money that goes to the different arms of Stag Media. It varies from year to year because, for instance, Stag Radio had to install a new studio this year, so obviously a lot of money went into that. The year before, it was StagTV that received a lot of money, and the printing costs for the Stag are quite fixed, and a chunk of the budget goes to that as well. Okay,
Georgie? Do you know those figures?
Yeah, I don't sit on the committee, but I have done a lot of research into this because I know it's quite a big issue. Money in general is, and Steph is right. The media's, especially the radio and Stag TV a few years ago, put in a lot of money into new technology. It was a substantial amount, but it's paid off in the next few years as they are now
So you've done a lot of research. What's your research come up with? Do you have figures?
Yep. Breakdown of last year, there was just over 8.5k for the Stag, and around 7.5 for Stag TV, and 3 for the radio. But obviously, that is now slowly declining. They're kind of paying back it because they are leading less.
Okay, that is roughly right. Add on £3,500 for the editor-in-chief as well to that. That's part of the Stag Media budget as well. So we have a few questions coming in. There's someone wants to ask. Okay, that's specifically to one candidate, so I'll avoid that one for now. I do want to see if anyone on the floor has questions because this is quite important. It's an important position that's been elected. There's only 2 candidates for this. There's a question over here, and then there's one at the back. I'll just go to Lorna first. Sorry, that mic's not on.
I can shout.
That's working now.
Okay, so at the start, in the question that was referred to, something called the conflict was referred to. Are we allowed to elaborate on that so people in the room who don't know what happened can know?
Would you like the candidates to elaborate on the relationship or what's your specific question? If you phrase it very specifically,
okay.
Then...
Can the candidates please elaborate on the conflict and what you would do if said conflict arose again?
Okay, I'm going to go to Georgie first.
The conflict, from my knowledge, was a potential takeover of the Stag radio from an outside local radio. This was, I think it was dealt with very well. To be honest, I think the medias as a whole have become more of a community because of it. If this arose again, I think people would, I think it would be handled in a similar way. It was handled very professionally, but my opinion on how I would handle it would be how I answered my question, in having everyone there in one big meeting, because I think what went wrong this year was miscommunication, with people not knowing the full story. Like you said, no one knows much of it. It was hard for me to find out all the information, but that would be my overall thing, would be communication is key.
What's your understanding of the conflict?
The conflict, which I was obviously drawn into because I am the president of StagTV, so I am one of the 3 media heads, was that from the Stag Radio point of view, they were called into a meeting where they were told that they're going to be joined by Kane FM in their studio and that they have to work under their leadership. When I spoke to some of the SABs, they told me that it was merely a suggestion because they had gone to Kane FM's studio the day before, had spoken to them about possible opportunities, and then that had just come up as an idea. So there's obviously 2 very different sides to the story, and I think there was a week-long fight about this, which could have been solved very quickly if both parties would have listened to what the other ones were saying, which I think could have been handled more progressively by the editor-in-chief at that time, because it took a long time for information actually to come across to both sides. Okay,
I'm going to have to finish you there. I'm going to move on from this issue. You've mentioned the editor-in-chief, Steph, and the current editor-in-chief, Andy. Do you think that there's anything that Andy has done wrong this year? Do you think there's something that you think should have been dealt with better? It's an opportunity for you to give an example, or do you think he's been absolutely perfect? First of all, Steph.
I think Andy has been a great editor-in-chief. He's taken the role definitely to the next level. I mean, it's a very new role. What I think could have been dealt with is to be more, I don't want to say aggressive, but to investigate more, especially when it comes to problems, and to really push...
What kind of problems? Investigate what kind of problems?
Like the Stag Radio takeover that then turned out not to be a takeover. I think pushing for a media code of conduct that is publicly accessible is very important, because then people, if they see themselves in jeopardy, have something to call back to, and the editor-in-chief has something that he can make decisions on.
Okay, Georgie?
Yeah, I agree. Andy has done a great job this year. I think where he's got the medias right now at a very kind of close group is great. But the reason I'm running is because I want to see that push further, which is what was written in my manifesto about trying to get everyone, whether it be department, society, or sports club, more involved with the medias and more aware of them.
There is a communications officer position, as I'm sure you're aware. It's currently vacant within the union for various reasons, which will be perhaps touched on tomorrow. But there is currently a role which is vacant. Do you miss the role? Do you miss not the individual, but do you miss having someone fulfilling that role? And do you think that actually the executive board would be okay without that position? That's first of all to Georgie.
I don't think I can give that answer as a yes or no, in the sense that I personally miss that role. I think it's more...
Well, to what extent, if you are editor-in-chief next year, will you think that the executive board will suffer not having a communications officer? Surely this is a communications officer. There's a number of students with that kind of sentiment coming through. We have a paid editor-in-chief and an unpaid communications officer. What's the difference? Are you doing this role for the money? rather than the communications officer, which might do the same thing? I will give that to both candidates.
Yep. Well, the communication officer has a duty to the union. I will also be representing the board of trustees. I think the communications officer is an important role. In my manifesto, I have plans to use that role to help engage the societies and the exec committees. I do think it should be a role that should be filled next year.
What do you think?
I think the editor-in-chief role and the communications officer role are often seen as kind of the same. Many people don't know the difference. They're in fact very different roles. The communications officer's role is in fact to communicate, to get students to get their opinions out there and bring them to the union and give them feedback to them. Whereas the editor-in-chief role is, if you look at the duties for the job, is a much more organizational role, and then working together with the communications officer to incorporate what he brings or she brings to Stag Media. So I think they are very, very different roles, and therefore we need a communications officer next year.
Okay, I have to stop you there. Okay then, so I gave you some audience figures. We had some feedback from Twitter, from yourselves, from the floor, about this idea of individual development of members of the media, about how it's not just about audience numbers, not just about broadcasting. What's more important then? Is it a great volunteering experience, or is it audience figures? Is it viewing figures? Is it listening figures? What's more important? Steph? I'm going to push you for an answer on this. What's more important? Both is not an answer.
I'd go for student experience. I mean, the union is a company. Let's face it, they want to make money out of this as well, and we need the money to kind of sustain ourselves. But I think the training opportunities that people get in Stag Media is so valuable, and it's an investment into the future, because I know a lot of people that work in Stag Media at the moment, they want to pursue a career in media. And if the union is about supporting students, then cutting budget for an organization that is so vital to so many people would be a big mistake.
Okay, let's not go to cutting. That wasn't the question. So what would you say was more important then, Georgie?
I think it's the experience and the taking part.
Okay, so it's the taking part that counts. Why are we broadcasting then? Why don't we just keep this now, closed down, everyone who's here can watch? Because that is effectively the route that we could go down. Rather than broadcasting, there's a lot of effort going into broadcast it, which is obviously much appreciated, but to play devil's advocate, why broadcast if it's just, okay, we have 7 listeners on Stag Radio, why not just do that for the individuals?
Broadcasting is the whole of the experience within that. If we did just stopped it in that sense, there would be no awareness around campus, there would be no one wanting to do it. There may be a very small awareness, but there is some of it, and the aim is that there is a potential to push it out there. If you just stop it altogether, that's basically just giving up on it.
Okay. Second question to build on that. The trustees have pushed on figures. They have pushed on listening figures, on viewing figures. What will you do when these trustees challenge you? One of the trustees is downstairs acting as a pundit. Hi, Barry. So when you're challenged next year on those figures, what are you going to say if they say X media is underperforming? You're going to say, well, it's a great experience. It costs £23,000 a year to have this media in total, but it's a great experience. That is, I need to get the figures right here, societies get roughly half of what the media gets. That's how much societies get. How are you going to justify that the media is that important as an experience, as a society, as an exclusive closed Facebook group society, that it deserves that much funding, that it's that much more important than other societies? Go to Georgie first.
I said that obviously it is all about participation, but yes, of course, secondly, then it does come into the fact that it does cost a lot of money, and you do need people listening. First of all, on my manifesto, I say that I want to integrate all the medias, and I think that by doing that is one way of pushing more views out there, because we become a whole. It's the same like Team Surrey. if I relate to sports. Not many people knew about each individual.
Just stick to the point on this one. So what are you going to say to the trustees? Say to you, right, figures are down here. Let's get rid of them. What are you going to say? They're really expensive. Bear in mind why they're so important.
I would say no. We're not getting rid of anyone, but we can work around this by ways
Steph, what do you think? What are you going to say?
I would promise the Board of Trustees to investigate the issue, because obviously it is a problem if a society, if one of the media arms can't sustain itself, and provide like a close follow-up on what the progress is in that matter. And if they still think they don't want to support them anymore, I would still think it should be kept alive for the student experience. And part of the student experience is to get a bigger listenership or a bigger viewership. Otherwise, I mean...
Okay. Any views from the audience? Any views? We've got a view over here. Can we just get a roaming mic over here? I'll take a few views. If we can just keep these to views rather than questions, just to mix it up a little bit, and I'll send it round and see if people have comments. So we've got Richard.
So you've both said that the student experience is more important than the listenership and the viewership, and we've all just found out that a lot of money is ploughed in. I would just like to... So I wanted to ask it as a question, but is it really right that you guys as a society, a group of societies in media, receive so much money to, from what it looks like from the outside, serve yourselves in a future career?
I will take that as a question. I will take that as a good question. We'll go first of all to Steph. Justify the existence and the expenditure, I think, is the crux.
Mm-hmm. I think building a bigger viewer and listener and readership is part of the experience, as I previously stated. I mean, I can speak for myself. I've spent weeks preparing this broadcast and preparing this question time. And I do it because I really enjoy doing it, and it's what I want to do for a living.
Surely
later
the
on.
societies also do things because they really enjoy them. Justify to Richard, who's unsatisfied, the money, the expenditure.
It's by nature a very expensive activity that we do. I mean, the Stag has running printing costs. StagTV obviously needs camera equipment, and Stag Radio needs a studio. But these are all investments that are not made every year. Like, we're not spending thousands of pounds on all of the societies.
I'll move to Georgia. I'll give Georgia a right to respond.
Yeah, we are we are a very technology-heavy media, basically. It's going to be expensive, but they've realised this year, and we have examples where Stag Radio has joined up with a club within Guildford to help raise money within their media. StagTV has also done the same. So yes, there is that issue of there is a lot of money going into it, but the medias are actually doing something to help that and make money for themselves.
Okay. Another comment from over here. Can we keep this one a comment, please, just because I've got some questions coming in. Need to ask some from a broad range of media.
Is there any way that you could source
That's a question.
that money from
That's a
somewhere
question.
else?
I'm sorry. I'll come back to you with a question. It's just how quite a few questions people get frustrated if I don't ask them from everywhere. I'll come back to you if you have a comment. Have we got any other comments? Someone over here has a comment? Just please stick to that for now.
I was going to say that obviously experience is important, but for me, the main reason that money needs to be invested in the medias is because we live in a time now where media is so prevalent within our society, and in order to be a modern university that keeps evolving with the times, for instance, last night, Surrey Decides was trending nationwide on Twitter. That's a part of the media. If we want to go forward as a uni and keep up with unis around us and prosper as a uni, then that's why we need to invest money in the media, and that's my opinion.
Specifically in broadcasting, I guess, is your point.
Not specifically in broadcasting. Broadcasting is definitely a part of it because it's a part of the media. Okay. And like both editor-in-chiefs or candidates for it are saying, it's all about integrating the medias together. So it's broadcasting, listenership, everything. Okay, thank you for your comment. Any other comments before we move on? Any from this side of the room? Okay, no instant hands. Okay, so USSU.co.uk, union website, gets over 5,000 views, 5,000 visitors per week. However, at the moment, if I log into that website, I cannot listen to the radio on the homepage, used to be able to, and I cannot view the Stag from the homepage. However, I can see the updates from StagTV. For 2 years, when the radio was GU2,
that broadcast was broadcasting French jazz. It was the wrong channel, and no one flagged that up for 2 years. That's true. Most of what I say is true, hopefully. So I'd like you to explain, perhaps, you're both involved in the media. Why have you not pushed to change that already? Why wait until you're being paid to do it? Why haven't you changed that? Yeah, and that goes to Georgie first.
Sorry, can you...
So why are all three media not easily accessible from the homepage where there's 5,000 visitors per week? Why has that not been changed? Have you noticed?
There has been issues with the website. I believe that was actually down to this idea of whether to stand in as a whole Stag Media website inclusive or to use their separate web pages. Each media, I think, wanted their own idea of what they wanted for a website and whether they wanted to have it within the union website. This is obviously an issue that is slowly getting resolved, and there is a website coming up.
Okay.
But it's in process.
Steph?
Yes, there has been issues with developing a joint Stag Media website, which was part of the joining all three medias together under one name. And the problem is that the union webpage operates on a system called SharePoint, which isn't the ideal solution. For example, a live player for Stag Radio. It's hard to embed. And therefore, I've been sitting on the website committee for that. We have tried to find a solution that makes sense for everyone, and we are resolving it. And there already is a joint starting page created that people can access, and they can access the Stag and find a link to Stag Radio.
Okay, thank you. I've been corrected. It was artistic French jazz. Apparently, that's a different type of jazz. Okay. Sorry. Okay, it's all about the student experience. So will you forbid non-students from taking part? It's all about the student experience, right? There's a lot of investment going in from the student's pocket, after all. It's not for profits for students, or is it non-students? That goes first of all to Steph.
I would not forbid a non-student member to take part, because we actually have quite a lot of alumni that frequently revisit Stag Media to take part in big events like this, for example.
Is that fair, do you think, on students?
I think that is fair, especially if they're alumni, because they have spent years and a lot of time and effort to get Stag Media to where it is now. I mean, we all started off as very small society somewhere hidden away, and we've kind of come to be this big organisation. Okay,
let's ask your answer. Georgie?
Yeah, I agree with Steph. I believe anyone, like a student should be involved with the media. It's of course fair. It's also a great, great development in the sense that people could use that as a mentor. Someone from the alumni coming back and helping out. They've got experience of it being in a career, and I think actually it's a very good way.
Okay, so we have two candidates here who agree with each other. We have a voting system, I'll keep repeating this, where you can only vote for one person. So in order for us to distinguish, perhaps it would be a better way to do this. Each candidate, I'll just give you 1 minute to have a look at the manifestos. You can look at my copy if you like, if you've got a copy there. I'd like you to ask a question to the other candidate based on their manifesto or based on your experience of their campaign or them as a candidate, and see if we can distinguish between the two candidates, because you're both doing very well. I think a lot of people here are not sure whether to go Ron then someone else, or I'm not sure. You're both coming across well. This is an election. We do need to know who to vote for. And there is student money, quite a lot of it going into this. So I'll just give you 1 minute to have a think. You are welcome to look at manifestos if you like. And if everyone else wants to have a ponder and keep hashtagging, #Surrey Decides. I'll give you a second.
Yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Okay. Let's just have some order. Okay, Georgia, what's your one question? It's your one opportunity to challenge Steph.
You have been heavily involved in StagTV. I've come in just as on the sidelines. I haven't been mainly involved in one media. Do you think that would affect how you deal with all the medias if you were to get the position?
I don't think it would affect my decisions because whilst I spent the last few months sitting on the ed board, my decisions have reflected that I actually stand for equal opportunities for all three of the different media, which is already a point in my manifesto. I think we've shown a lot of solidarity towards each other this year in the three media arms, especially when it came to the situation of the Stag Radio conflict. I think we've all shown a very strong, united facade.
Okay, and Steph.
Yes, so the job description of the editor-in-chief, which can be found on the Surrey Decides website, is that your duties are to chair the editorial board, to approve media output before publication, to ensure best practices adhered to by live and near live media, to represent student media at the board of trustees, and to provide recruitment and training for members. Where in your manifesto do you touch any of these points?
Do we have the job description quoted and the book handed over to Georgie?
In my manifesto, I focus on my points of integration, access, marketing and development. Within that role, my idea is to push those through. By doing that would be to be reporting to the Board of Trustees. I believe the guidelines for the job description are more
guidelines?
Yeah, I suppose so. They're just a kind of skeleton of what there is to do. As a person, I'm someone who kind of thinks outside the box and likes to push things a bit further. So when I kind of saw the guidelines, I thought, I can do that, that is understandable, but this is how I want to push it further, which is my aim in what I've put in my manifesto.
Okay, do we have any questions? Anyone provoked to ask a question? I'm going to allow one question directed at a specific candidate, but I'm going to do that for both candidates. It's an executive decision, which I might regret. So I would like a question, first of all, for Georgie, and I would like a question for Steph, secondly. So a question for Georgie, please. Keep it fair, but you're allowed to direct questions to candidates. Someone invented a rule saying you can't. That just doesn't say that anywhere. Question for Georgie. I think your hand went up first, rather. That was great.
Okay, I've got a question for Georgie. So far in this debate talk, I've heard a lot of what should have been done, what has gone wrong here. I really want to know, what can you do to improve Stag Media? If you're getting so much negativity so far, what can you do to make it, improve it, get a bigger audience?
Okay, you happy to answer that?
Yeah. I've got many ideas in mind. My main, obviously, thing is to get awareness out there. I think that's the most important. Ideas that I've come up with, the union does a lot of pop-up unions where people actively participate in giving opinions of what they think the union should do better, or what they think they are doing good. I think pop-up media days would be great for experience, to see what the media actually does, where the media actually comes onto campus, where the students are. We're just pushing the idea that, you know, they can be anywhere. I'm also I've spoken to people at the sports park, and I'm currently working with people on in the media about creating a media hub, which would be a place where you could broadcast from. You could basically where the medias would come together. It would be great for the sports and just for general media.
I have to wrap you up there if that's okay. We've got a question for Steph, please. First hand up over there. Very, very fast up, that one. You got to admire her.
How's this? I know it's something Georgie's mainly talked about, but Stephanie, what would you do to help advertise Stag Media?
I think it's most important to find out how the 3 different media tick, and that's part of the job I have been doing this year. StagTV, Stag Radio, and the Stag have different ways of advertising themselves. I know that the Stag has been, you know how you have the fruit and vegetable market on Thursday, and they had a pop-up store there to hand out the Stag to people with like an accommodating pen and like having a little chat with them, and I think that has worked really well for them. StagTV are obviously advertising themselves through their videos. We had a zombie advert this year, for example, and Stag Radio are doing a great job in communicating and liaising with nightclubs around Guildford and advertising themselves in the living room most Fridays.
I think that's a... You can't, let's leave it there, just so it's fair to one question to each candidate. I think we had fair answers. This is a really good question that's just come in. The Equality and Diversity officers seemed relatively open to the idea. I'm not saying they support it, but they would accept the idea of an EDL society if indeed that's what students wanted. If students wanted an EDL society, English Defence League, and they want to recruit using Stag Media, or they want a column in the paper, or they want their own show, or they want to have an EDL bite, how will you protect the union reputation and maintain freedom of speech? Steph?
When you mean advertise, is that...
They just want to appear in some way, they want to promote themselves. There's nothing overtly offensive other than the fact of the EDL doing what it does. Up to you to judge whether you think that's moral or not. What would your response be? It gets to the trustees board and they say, we need a response from you. What are you going to do?
If it came to the point that this society was actually forming and would actually want to make their opinions heard, we'd obviously have to report on it, because it is an issue that students shouldn't just run into. They should be informed of that's happening. And in that sense, it's important to again get both sides of the story. If the EDL want to,
do you have an opinion on it? Would you put your foot down? Are you happy to let it ride? What do you think? If it does happen, because things do come up and they have happened.
Making the society happen, or
well, giving them the oxygen of publicity.
I would do it in the frame of informing about the society now existing, because people have to know, but I would not do like an advertisement video for them.
Okay. Georgie?
In my honest opinion, I'd say no. I wouldn't agree with it at all, and I think as editor-in-chief, I have the right to give my opinion on it, and if I believe it's the right thing for the union, then I would say no.
Thank you for that answer. So, I'm going to end on one final question. The reason some of these seem quite restrictive and they seem perhaps negative is there have been a lot of difficult decisions that have had to be made this year. These candidates have said what they're going to do on their manifestos. They have that opportunity to do that, and through campaigning, they're obviously not going to speak in negatives. The final question, and this comes up, and it came up last year, it came up the year before. This is hypothetical, but it could happen. It gets to a situation where you have to decide to cut one of the 3 media, okay? You have given your answers of who your favourite media is, or we kind of had some kind of idea. You have to make that decision, okay? What is your answer to that? When you're asked by trustees, you have to cut one. This isn't I'd see what the students want, that kind of thing. This is hypothetical decision making. Sometimes it will be this tough. So I'll go. Who do I go to first? I'll go to Georgie.
I honestly say I would find every other reason to work around it than cut a media. If there was a problem with a media, the way I'd think about it is there's something going wrong with all of them. There are ways to cut out certain things within all medias.
Everything else has been tried. Final resort, you've got to cut someone. You've got to sign on the line. Someone just shouted, get off the fence. That is some sentiment that's coming in. This is show strength. Steph? Either of you can interject when one of you has thought.
Okay, obviously, again, I would try everything in my power to save them.
You've got to the...
Okay, I got it, I get it, okay.
I'm not... it's not going to be that easy, I'm really sorry. Just do this and then you can go.
I would cut the Stag because they could survive as an online paper as we are moving towards...
That's not cutting the Stag. That's just getting rid of one part of the Stag. You're cutting a media. Media doesn't exist anymore. Is it still the Stag? That's a leading question. You can answer what you like. Georgie, have you had a think?
I was thinking the same thing in the sense that I would cut the printing of the Stag and put it onto online, because then it's just an online presence, and that is essentially cutting out one
Is
of...
everyone satisfied with that answer? Is everyone satisfied with that answer? Right, guys, I'm going to count to 3, and after 3, you're going to say the media. You're either going to say Stag, radio, or TV, okay? 1, 2, 3. Right, all the media. Please vote wisely. Tough decisions have to be made. Ron is a candidate. Thank you very much. I'll hand over to Mike.
Hi, I'm Andy, this year's Editor-in-Chief, and you join us down in Pundits Corner for the continuation of the Stag media coverage. Joining me down here in Pundits Corner, we've got Paul Richmond from the Stag, Ollie Deed, former Union Chair, Barry Hitchcock, current Union Trustee, Ben Ilsley, this year's Station Manager for Stag Radio, and on the end, Mike Fraser, former member of StagTV, and Mad TV as it was then. So, before we come on to the candidates, let's start with this. How important is Stag media? I mean, should it continue if people aren't engaging?
Well, it's a bit of a, given that we're sitting here, there's coverage on the radio of this particular process, there's coverage in the Stag with the manifesto. I think it's a bit of a stupid question, to be honest with you. It's a very important aspect of what this union does, and this is, to me, this whole process of punditry, corn and the hustings, it's all trailblazing work that the media is doing. So for me, that adds value to being a student here at the university. So to me, that whole debate was one of the most defensive debates I've ever seen in my life, and I've seen a lot of these in my time. What I'd like to have seen was people's vision for the media moving forward into the future, and we had just question after question of negativity, and where was the vision there? It's all negative, defensive nonsense as far as I'm concerned. What we see here today is testament to the student media, and we should protect that.
Well, none of the candidates picked a media, so let's hope they don't shut us all down next year. So let's move on to the candidates. Steph this year has been StagTV's producer, and Georgie is the events officer for Sports Exec. Do we think either of these roles gives them an advantage?
She's a communications officer, isn't she?
Sorry, yes.
So I think any advantage can be given from working within the medias. I think both bring a certain level of expertise. I think so Steph's done some great stuff. I mean, I think without tooting our own horns as well, there's been a great sort of move towards the medias or being friends this year. Notice there was no controversy on Twitter or online about no, StagTV is better than Stag Radio, Stag Radio is better than StagTV, and the Stag kind of sitting at the side encouraging it all. But rather than instead, it's been a completely different discussion. I think that's a sign of where Steph's done great. But I think at the same time, what Georgie brings to the role is a slightly different sort of trend in taking the media to a different part of the university where it hasn't reached yet. And I think both have done good things thus far, and both will bring a lot to the role.
Yeah, Mike, you used to be on the Mad TV as it was then committee.
Yep.
Do you think?
I've been on the StagTV committee as well.
Correct.
Just to
sorry.
clarify.
So, do you think Steph's got an advantage there, or do you think Georgie can bring something else from Sports Exec?
That's a difficult question, because I think Steph's obviously got the background experience, but Georgie has the newer ideas, because Steph's ideas will have been implemented, kind of. I mean, obviously she'll have new ideas for her candidacy as well. But I did pick up on an interesting point where they were both saying, oh, well, we'd help sort of promote the student media and stuff. You can do that anyway. You don't need to be the editor-in-chief to get involved with student media. I mean, you're not the editor-in-chief. I wasn't the editor-in-chief. Paul on the end wasn't. Well, you might be the editor-in-chief at some point. You never know. But yes, I mean, you don't have to necessarily have this role to do some of the things that they were saying. So I thought it was a little conflicting there, but I would say that they're both sort of potentially equal, just they've got different merits.
Paul, on Twitter, was anyone favouring either one, or is it fairly balanced?
It seems very balanced, actually. People are picking up on the fact that it was quite a defensive debate. All of them none of them really stood apart with really controversial opinions. Again, with that last question, sort of not trying to give a very firm answer and trying to get around it a bit, hasn't really made people stand out with one candidate. Some people even saying maybe reopen nominations, but there are a lot of people which have chosen one or the other, but generally I don't think that one stands out above the other on Twitter.
I think it would have been very difficult to stand out in that debate, considering 80% of it was questions regarding why are they rubbish? Why should they be shut down? Why is the money wrong? Throwing of figures, and that wasn't a question time. That was essentially the equivalent to what Gorilla Slab should be. This is all the problems that's gone on with the media. It's clearly this is your fault now because you're having to answer them right now. I just want them. That was not a debate. That was a chance for, and I think it's come back to later debates that we need to have regarding the various conflicts that got brought up.
It should be, and I'm afraid should have been you up there.
It wasn't a question for them.
Questions. You know, these guys should be outlining a vision at the end of the day. You know, the way that was going, that debate, when you guys set up Mad TV, you know, it started off as a sort of small organisation. Now it's been built up to something that's massive. That would have been closed down after that debate, you know, right at its inception, with the tone of that. Nobody was able to outline their vision. I'm afraid Charlie, brilliant as he is, did his little Paxman routine, and I think that sort of shaped a little bit of the negativity around the debate. I would have liked to see more opportunity for them to outline, you know, 3 points that they would bring that are positive to the student media.
I think also, like, you know, a lot of these comments are easy to make about any society, in any situation you take. You can always turn around and go, right now you had 6 people turn up to your meeting, but you might have 60 members. Oh, right now that's the situation. You can say, oh, so I'm going to defend Stag Radio on this. Oh, look, they got 17, and it was 17, not 13. We're proud for the little handful of listeners extra. At any one particular time. In the course of a week, we have the same number of sort of listens and individual listeners as the combination of StagTV's videos, at least when they're doing 3 a week. I know they've increased their video account a lot this year. And those include repeat views. So where's the comparability there? You can also point out that 1,400 listens in a week is far more than people who walk into the student hub each day. So surely, like, that's entirely applicable then. And you take these, you know, these counts at any moment, and of course you can skew them like that. And I think that was the most disgusting part of that debate, is that it was a chance to take some very small situations and turn around and go, the Stag left a bunch of newspapers out that one time, let's not let them forget it for 6 years, you know, and that's a habit that really summarises the problems that the student media have had within the union this year.
We have had a lot of people on Twitter mentioning about the Stags being left out. We have recently dropped in number to sort of accommodate that, so we are on top of like this sort of thing. We have like a lot of people reading online, so the media are evolving, and there is a lot of things to do with these figures which might not be essentially accurate. And again, even if they were asked as questions like what are the figures, they're not the people to ask. I mean, it's us, the people that are running the medias now, and we know what they are, and that really shouldn't have been part of the debate, I think.
There are a lot of sort of quite acute questions there as well. I mean, you've got the one about closed groups. Now, I mean, are all societies, I would imagine, have some sort of group to share information on Facebook. So should all of them be open? I mean,
I'd love if every meeting that happened in November was open to every member of the student population to see how they felt about that. And I think that's a ridiculous question. Of course, people need to plan things via email or via Facebook. If anyone wants to see it, they can. You know?
I think Barry is a trustee. We all love Barry. I'm sure you've got some sort of views on it. We haven't heard from you yet, Barry. Well, just hear your view.
Trustees didn't come out of it very well it was always there were big bad people in the corner. But I mean, serious decisions do have to be made on finance. I do support Charlie on that. A few years ago, the union had a glider. Decided it couldn't afford to run it. Now, the experience for the students involved in gliding was huge, and justified on the basis that because people benefited from it, then it was worth the expense. But the expense became too much. So you do have to take these tough decisions sometime.
Okay, well, let's turn our focus back to the candidates. They both say in the manifesto they want a cross-media schedule, which actually already exists on the website. So, do you think they're padding out the manifestos? Do they know what the job role is?
They all say that communication is important. I've yet to see a candidate that's ever turned around and said communication unimportant. So, yeah, there's a lot of padding going on. They both, to me, like having watched our hustings just there, I think they were both, you know, quite impressive. They know their stuff. They were put on the spot, and the audience sort of howled at them a little bit, which was all good fun. But you know, if you give them a bit more time to set out their vision, I think you could get two sort of equally interesting sort of futures for for the media.
It's a role that grows.
Sorry. Offence there, are you?
Sorry?
Yeah, I think the role grows to the people. I mean, you know, you took this role and turned it into something that was about making the media make friends, and that happened, and that was great. Last year, Abby was taking the transition into becoming core functions. You know, next year's editor could do something completely different. We don't know what's going to happen.
Cool. Well, we're going to leave it there and head back upstairs to see the next debate.